Space Marine 2's hard weekly stratagems have been a wonderful addition to the game, and they finally give players who have been seeking a challenge above absolute the challenge and endgame level content that they have been very patiently waiting for. Even though I do agree with this statement, I do recognize that there are many other players out there that feel that the hard weekly challenges in specific need to be altered so that they are more friendly to a larger majority of the Space Marine 2 community. Today, I want to go over some of the more common arguments that I see online from players detailing why they feel that the system needs changed and provide my own thoughts and feedback as to why I disagree with them. Now, a lot of the points that I'm going to be addressing, I do just want to throw out. I tried to generalize them as best that I could just for the sake of time, and so they may be lacking a little bit of nuance, and I completely understand that. However, I still feel that the points that I'm going to bring up more than adequately address what a lot of players are voicing. So, the first thing that I want to point out, and that I tend to see pretty frequently online, is a portion of the player base feeling that Saber only ever caters to the hardcore players and the sweat lords. Oftentimes, they'll cite the addition of difficulties such as lethal and absolute as definitive proof of this. However, I feel that these opinions are kind of only looking at Space Marine 2's life cycle in very, very small and brief snapshots. I do feel that Saber has actually done quite a bit within the game to help out the average Joe, and I want to talk about a couple of things that I've noticed that Saber has done throughout the life cycle so far just to help out newer players. I think probably the low-hanging fruit to go with is going to be the access of higher tiered weapons without necessarily having to complete the corresponding difficulties. So what do I mean by that? For the players that have been playing since this game first dropped, if you wanted a relic tier weapon, you were required to complete an operation on Ruthless or above. The Data Refinement Center did not exist. So if you were ever unable to clear, let's say, Substantial or Ruthless, Lethal, Absolute, any of them, you would permanently be stuck at only being able to use master-crafted weapons. However, Saber did listen to a lot of the community feedback, and they did add in the option to trade in some of the excess armory data you had into higher tier armory data so that more players would have access to these higher leveled weapons. Again, as of right now, it is entirely possible for a player to have every weapon in the game at the relic level by only playing the average difficulty. Yes, it would require a fair bit of grinding, but this is something that at one point did not exist within the community. Now, another little point that I want to throw out there is that, yes, while Saber has added new difficulties to the game, they have also readjusted those difficulties several times throughout the life cycle. One of the big ones that I want to throw out in specific is when Lethal was first added. So I can't remember exactly what the game mechanic was officially called. However, I do remember how it worked. And essentially, it required players to, lack of a better term, remain nut to butt with their teammates just so that they could regain contested health and armor shards. Now, a lot of players out there were upset by this. They felt that it made the new difficulty way too challenging, and Saber did listen, and they did dial it back to the current lethal that we have right now. A lot of people were initially upset by this, and at one point you could even find people begging that Saber lock the battle-worn helmet just because people were able to unlock it without having to go through the struggle of the original lethal difficulty. Something else that I want to throw out, since it's probably the most recent example, but whenever Siege Mode was initially released, a lot of the different, I'm going to call them kill streaks, but battlefield supports that you could get did come at a much higher cost. So, for example, Voltus the Dreadnought originally cost a flat 1,500 points. However, a lot of players felt that by having to allocate 1,500 points to the Dreadnought, they weren't able to buy equipment such as stim packs, armor boost, just various items that would help keep them alive. Same goes with the Cadian reinforcements. Saber did listen, and they did go back and drop the amount of resource points that you would have to put in for the Dreadnought down to 1,250, and also bumped the resource amount lower for the Cadians. That way players could still get to experience those higher end battlefield supports while also still having resources left over for items such as medical supplies, armor boost, ammo, grenades, whatever else it might be. Now, the next thing that I want to kind of talk about is that some players feel that these particular stratagems are designed to do nothing more than to waste their time. I just want to say that nobody, not even Saber, is forcing you to play the hard weekly stratagems. It is a personal choice. Now, I get it. At times, the matchmaking RNG can suck, and you might get paired with players that are punching well above their weight class, and it might require you to play through it several other times. However, I think that this is perfectly reasonable, that they should be challenging, and that, yes, I don't want something that I'm going to be guaranteed to complete the first try every single time. Also, if I'm consistently jumping in with players that aren't capable of playing at that difficulty, I do think it's important to socialize. Go out there, make connections with players that are able to play at your skill level. That way you always have players to pull from that can help you out with those weekly challenges. I know it's very commonplace now that after a match is over, a lot of players want to hurry up and immediately leave the lobby, and I'll sometimes throw myself into that category as well. Sometimes I just want to get in and out, complete games, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, there have been also times where I am playing on more challenging difficulties or stratagems, and I come across players that I had a really positive experience with because they're able to keep up and add to the team. So, hey, I take that time out. If they're willing to party up, play a couple additional games, we do that. Usually add each other on my friend or on our respective friends list. That way, if, hey, there's ever another challenge that pops up and I'm done dealing with randoms, cool. I have other players that I know are at my skill level that I can play with. And again, if you are one of the players that's punching well above your weight class on it, nobody is forcing you to complete it. You are free to play any of the other stratagems. Saber was very clear that the weekly ones in specific were meant to be more catered to a challenge, while some of the daily ones would have a mix between challenge and, of course, an increase just to the overall fun. Now, talking about the challenge, that's probably the biggest thing that I see is a lot of players feel that a lot of these specific battlefield conditions that we see are just way too extreme and make the game unplayable. I will certainly agree that at times they can be an absolute pain to work with, but I've never felt that I've come across a stratagem that was impossible for anyone within the community to beat. Now, for myself, that may be a different story. There have definitely been times where, hey, I'm playing a stratagem and I'm constantly getting whooped. However, does that mean that just because I can't complete it, that's an issue overall? No. Also, again, Saber was very clear that the weekly stratagems were meant to be a challenge, and a lot of players were asking for that endgame content, so we received that. And one of my big worries would be is if we did drop the difficulty, we're just going to kind of have this accordion effect of where we're going to have some people within the community happy, and then we're going to start to see a bigger push for the difficulty to go up. The other thing I want to throw out with some of the challenges is they're meant to be just that, a challenge. I know I already said it, but I don't want to replay through the same operations the same way that I do without the stratagem modifiers all the single time. So to use this week's current hard stratagem with where you only have one piece of armor, kind of like with the stratagem I've got going on right now, and 66% less health, I played that with the sniper. Most of the time when I'm playing with the sniper, even on absolute, I do tend to play pretty aggressively with it. One of the things that I appreciated about this stratagem was it forced me to slow down and really take in all the benefits that the sniper class has to offer with long range. A lot of times too, that meant instead of just rushing through and bulldozing straight through everything, I actually had to sit down and kind of think about my engagements and plan it out with my teammates. Yes, there were a couple times that I lost, and I'm okay with that. Again, if I'm playing something where the possibility of failure is there, for me at least, it feels a lot more exciting than if every time I boot up the game, I know I'm going to have a 100% win rate. Again, sometimes the battlefield modifiers that are on the specific weeklies might be very damn difficult to do. I'm not going to deny that, but there's nothing wrong with also saying that, you know, hey, I am maybe not at this skill level. Let me go back, work on my gameplay, and if it's still around, whenever I think I've improved enough to do it, cool, give it another try. But also just keep in mind the weekly stratagems, they are not mandatory. Which that's going to bring me into my next point, which is players feeling that because of how difficult the stratagems have gotten, they're being locked out of content. This specifically being the new customization and also the heroic weapons. Now, what I just want to throw out is I personally do believe that it's entirely fair that if you are playing something that is more challenging, you should be rewarded at a higher level for it. If everybody was able to sit there and clear all the hard stratagems like it was nothing, that would make it super easy to grind out, and we really wouldn't have anything to work towards. Also, it is entirely possible to unlock all the new heroic weapons and the armor pieces by only playing the normal difficulty. So every week, and I just want to preface with I am only going to be talking about the normal mode for this, you are guaranteed 360 points every week. That is, of course, assuming that you complete the weekly challenge. But if you're doing that and completing all the daily challenges on normal, you are unlocking 360 accolade points. This is enough to buy one heroic weapon per week with 60 points left over. And as long as you do this every day for 5 weeks, you will have all 6 of the heroic weapons unlocked, and I would say roughly about you're looking at the same amount of gameplay time to unlock all the armor pieces. I think that, again, this is perfectly fair and reasonable that if you are able to complete these higher level challenges, you should be compensated for it, especially going into it knowing that the chances of you failing is a lot higher. The other thing that I want to throw out with is that a lot of people see these heroic weapons as some sort of god tier weaponry that's just going to make the game feel like it's constantly on easy mode. And I've already made a video talking about that, but that is just not true. Saber has been pretty upfront after some initial feedback talking about that heroic weapons were meant to be a lateral upgrade to the current relic tier. What do I mean by that? If you haven't watched that video, it just simply means that stat-wise, a lot of the heroic weapons actually fit more comfortably within the relic category than what they would be at a tier above. The only big difference is with the heroics, while the stats are similar, you do receive some sort of bonus that helps out, you know, some sort of niche play style. So for example, with the Xenophase blade, if you love doing the power rakes, cool, that particular power sword is going to give you a nice little bonus when it comes to doing that. However, you can complete every other difficulty in the game with the heroic power swords, and it's going to be just fine. In fact, in all honesty, most of the heroic weapons, I feel like they're outclassed by other weapons within the relic category. The only exception to that, I would say, is the heavy plasma incinerator. I do think that is genuinely a step above a lot of the other plasma incinerators that we currently have. But again, I don't think it's anything to where if you don't have that particular weapon, you're going to be unable to play the game. I think they're there. It's just something fun to work towards, and that's really it. If they happen to perform better than the relic tier weapons, hey, that's cool, but you shouldn't be going in with the expectation of that. Plus, in terms of cosmetics, again, the cosmetics are relatively cheap. You can unlock one or yeah, you can at least unlock one every single week, and even if that's all you're going for, you're going to have 160 points left over, allowing you to complete all the customization challenges very, very quickly. And again, another thing that I also want to throw out as well, because, for example, some of the different armor pieces that used to be locked behind lethal and absolute, a lot of the dailies do have modifiers on them that are more geared towards fun. And guess what? If you complete a hard daily stratagem, you get credit for completing that mission on absolute. So you can now unlock equipment such as the battle-worn pauldron and helmet for a lot easier than what it used to be when the game first came out. But overall, I do kind of think that, unfortunately, we do live in a little bit of a culture that I don't want to say glorifies, but there's a big emphasis on immediate satisfaction. Like, as players and just as human beings in general, I think that we do tend to gravitate towards stuff that rewards us instantaneously. And one of the big things that I personally have really enjoyed about these stratagems is the fact that I may not get it on the first try. I may have to sit there and maybe experiment around with some classes, or maybe I'll have to take a game serious with teammates and really focus on communication and other things that, quite honestly, I really haven't had to worry about in a while, just because my skill has gotten to the point where I can kind of have a pretty relaxing night strictly playing on absolute. And that brings me to something else as well that I do kind of want to throw out there and kind of leave as the final stating point for this video. But for a lot of people that do want to go out there and complete these hard weeklies, that way you do get the accolade points, I think honestly the first place to start isn't by necessarily having the difficulty lowered for you. I think it's going back and figuring out, where are the deficiencies in your gameplay and how can you improve? Because in all honesty, I see a lot of people out there who probably can't complete just even lethal, and they're jumping into these hard challenges expecting that they're just going to get carried through. And again, the stratagems, specifically the hard weekly ones, they are meant to be the end game content. And this is something too that we also see in a lot of games, and I don't really see people complaining about that hey, you went through, you grinded out this game, you have the max armor or the max weapons or max stats, whatever it is, but you've hit the peak of it, and now you want to play against something that's still going to offer you a challenge despite maybe have completed everything else in the game. That to me is the spirit of what these stratagems are supposed to be, and I'm glad to see that Saber did keep their promise and give us these stratagems, because honestly, it's been something that keeps me coming back to it every day. Just to, even if it's just to shut my brain off and play a couple normal ones, I love the fact that if I do want to sit there and really push to see just how good of a player I am, I have something there for it that's dedicated to me and a lot of other people that are at the same level. But as always, thank you for watching. Feel free to leave your comments and all that other good stuff down in the comment section, and hopefully I didn't come across as maybe too condescending, because ultimately at the end of the day, I am glad that Space Marine 2 does have a good and healthy community to it. I know I've said it numerous times, and I'll say it as often as I can, but I've been able to have some of my best recent gaming experiences on this game. But at the same time, I do feel that, hey, there is a part of the population for this particular entry. We do want that option to have that challenging in-game content. We're not looking to exclude others. We hope that you can join us, but we don't want that to be done by just lowering the standards so that we, again, feel like we're still wanting more. But as always, thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.